In the previous episodes, we talked about the basics of conducting technique, patterns, mixed meters, legato and staccato gestures, and so forth. Obviously, following the notation, one generally mixes up different types of gestures, but all of them could still fit into a pattern. The question is, can an infinite repetition of the same gestures represent 300 years of music? The answer is obviously no. But then why do we keep using the same patterns for every composer, for every piece of music ever written? And why are we in awe when we see someone doing something different, like Carlos Kleiber or Georges Prêtre? Ultimately, can we learn to do the same? Hello everyone, I'm Gianmaria Griglio and I welcome you to a new episode of Conducting Pills. If you're new here, this channel is all about classical music, score analysis and conducting tips. I want to thank all of my patrons for making this series possible, and now let's keep going. Now the answer to the question is yes, but what it requires is a change of mindset. Now let's start with another question. What are the steps to prepare for a concert? Learning the score, create and practice a technical system to deliver the information to the players, and deliver your interpretation. Now most of us are taught 1 and 3. Sing the lines, do the structural analysis, get to the bottom of the harmonic relationships, study the score at the piano if you can. That's number 1. Then go to the podium and be yourself. After all, you can't have the orchestra in your living room to practice, so once you know a few patterns and a few tricks, you do as you feel. Now that generally turns into the conductor feeling very insecure, which then results in frustration on both sides and with blaming the players because they don't understand or pay enough attention, and the orchestra eventually turning away and taking over, effectively making the performance and saving the conductor in the process. And then we wonder why players do not look at conductors. So how do we go around this problem? Studying the music in the score is not enough. We need to acquire the vocabulary to deliver that music. Music creates the technique. Therefore, every piece of music, down to every bar, should account for different technical elements. This means that when you look at the score, you need to start looking at the notated music as baton movements. That's when you get the visual representation of the music. That's when you can actually start conducting. Now, start by considering 3 key aspects. The length and character of the notes, determining the length of the strokes. Dots, dashes, slurs, accents, and so forth. When a note has a dot, you would do a short stroke, now that it's coming from the wrist. When a note is longer, you would elongate the stroke. A circle can correspond to a slur. If the second note of the slur has a dot, you would make half a circle and stop the stroke. Now, dynamics determine the region in which a stroke is performed, away or close to your body, and its amplitude. Stay in this area for a forte dynamic and come back towards your body for a diminuendo to a piano and pianissimo. Now, there are exceptions, of course, and this area can also be used to play piano and pianissimo with very small wrist gestures. Dynamics also determine the amplitude of the stroke. You cannot ask for a pianissimo while doing big gestures and shushing the orchestra at the same time. That's also unpolite. Or even worse, by conducting with wide strokes and kneeling behind the stand. Orchestration determines the space in which the stroke is performed, higher or lower. And this allows you to take into consideration another aspect. Let's imagine you have to conduct a brass section in a typical chorale. If you conduct that up here, you will miss the full weight of the instruments and the sound will change to one that's as thin as the players can do it. You can imagine that with the second movement of Dvorak's 9th Symphony. Now, all of this is known as visual score study and baton placement. It's the first step in practicing at home and being more prepared when you get in front of the orchestra. It's also a way to speed up score study. The amount of practical information that you can deduce just by looking at the score is enormous. And you can now start looking at the score in a 3-dimensional space and using different parts of your conducting space for different reasons, all coming from the music itself. Once you start looking at the music this way, you will be forced to emulate what's on the page with strokes that closely relate to it. Every composer, every piece of music will get a fresh look, a new set of baton gestures that mirror what they wrote, layered with your own interpretation. It's the beginning of the end of repetitive time beating in endless patterns. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button right below this video and ring the bell so that you will be notified every time a new video comes out. For more in-depth analysis, conducting technique and conducting exercises, look on my website where you can find more than 100 videos and follow my Facebook group. And if you want to support this series, you're always welcome to do so on Patreon. All the links are in the description. Let me know in the comments what you think about this video. If you have any suggestions for future ones, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of this series where we will talk about another key aspect of this new language, registration. In the meanwhile, please continue to enjoy music and be well.